Good morning. We are walking with Jesus through the Gospel of Mark. I want to tell you there are a few moments in the life of Jesus that I think are truly out of this world experiences. And we're going to be talking about one of those today. I think his baptism was when God spoke from the heavens at that point. I think certainly the resurrection was one of those moments. But in Mark chapter 9, verses 2 through 8, we have here the story of what we call the Transfiguration. And I believe, too, that this truly is one of those out-of-this-world moments. We're 6 days down the road from when we last left Jesus, and he is making his way back toward Jerusalem. It may not be a very direct route. We're not really sure exactly what was going on here as far as the placement of these events. But we do know that he had already started talking to his disciples and preparing them for what was to come, because he knew what was to come when they got to Jerusalem. On this particular day, he took with him Peter and James and John, and they went up on the top of, as it says, a very high mountain. And there he was transfigured before them. Now, keep in mind, first of all, Peter, James, and John were kind of his inner circle. It was these same three that Jesus would take with him into the garden shortly before he is to be arrested and taken away. That's not very many days down the road from where we are right now. But Peter, James, and John were kind of the inner circle of Jesus' disciples. But when they went up on the mountain, something very unusual happened. I probably ought to say here that it's called the Mount of Transfiguration. Many sources will identify this as Mount Tabor. We really do not know because the scripture does not say. Mount Tabor was actually not linked with the Transfiguration until the 4th century. And so someone there may have been speculating in a way that was really beyond their authority to do so. But something did happen up there that was indeed interesting. When it says Jesus was transfigured before them, he was evidently illuminated in some way. He evidently kind of glowed while he was up there. In the tradition of the Greek Orthodox Church, they call this the light of Tabor. And so when you see the icons, the religious paintings that are held dear to the Greek Orthodox or the Russian Orthodox Church, you will see in many of those paintings what appear to be beams of light or a halo of some kind surrounding Jesus or maybe his disciples. And this is identified by the Greek Orthodox Church as the light of Tabor. They get this whole idea of from the illumination that evidently was occurring on Jesus at that point. Again, we're not sure exactly which mountain this was, but that really doesn't matter, because the big thing here is what happened on that mountain, because it is of such great significance. This illumination that took place certainly would have opened the eyes of Peter, James, and John, and they would have wondered what was going on. And then appearing with Jesus was Moses and Elijah, two very prominent characters from the Old Testament. And it says that they were talking to Jesus. Now that's a conversation I'd like to have heard. This is another one of those places I kind of hope we have instant replay when we get to heaven so that we can know what was going on. But they were talking with Jesus. And Peter was so amazed at what he was seeing that he wanted to build 3 altars, one for Jesus, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. Now at that moment a cloud formed over them, and a voice came out of that cloud that said, "This is my beloved Son, listen to him." The significance here is that Moses represented the law and Elijah represented the prophets, but Jesus was the one who was now holding authority over them. We see that same indicator of the authority of Jesus over in the book of Hebrews, chapter 1, verses 1 and 2. It says this: God, after he spoke long ago to the fathers and the prophets in many portions and in many ways, in these last days has spoken to us in his Son, whom he appointed heir of all things, through whom also he made the world. Well, here is again the confirmation. Jesus' teaching, the message he was bringing, was surpassing that of the law of Moses and surpassing that of the prophets. This confirmation in the witness of Peter and James and John would no doubt prove to be very, very important as they would go on and carry for the rest of their lives the message of Christ to the world. Certainly this had to affect them in a very deep and powerful way. And then, evidently as quickly as they had appeared, they were gone, leaving Jesus alone standing before them. As I said, this must have been an amazing moment, and I believe it's worthy of our reflection and of our meditation. We think about what happened on that mount and what God was accomplishing in Jesus at that moment, because all authority is in him, says the end of Matthew, and therefore we listen to Jesus. It is through his words that we are judged. It is through his words that we are made new people. And so when we remember those words, "This is my beloved Son, listen to him," that still stands before us, just as Jesus stood before those 3 astonished disciples on that mountain that day. Historic event that stretches our minds, because the presence of God in the form of Jesus also stretches our minds. Today, we listen to him. Have a great day. Bye.
They resound with God's own heart. Oh, let the ancient words impart. Words of life, words of hope.